All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. For all our UPSC aspirants out there tuning in, this is the daily UPSC mains current affairs, important topics discussion series. And today's deep dive is going to be a really crucial one. It could very well show up on your mains exam. We're talking about Australia's their deepening relationship with India. We're gonna go deeper than just the headlines today. Really try to unpack this. Drawing insights from an article titled "Australia-India: New Roadmap for Economic and Strategic Cooperation." It was featured in the Hindu.
Definitely a timely topic, and the roadmap itself is quite significant.
Absolutely, and what's really caught my eye is how Australia is. They're really putting their money where their mouth is. They're projecting India as a top 3 global economy by 2030. And they're not, it's not just talk. It's not just trade deals. They're investing pretty heavily in education and skills development within India. So it really begs the question, what's the strategy here? How does this impact India's place on the world stage?
Well, it's certainly fascinating to see this level of confidence from Australia. It's one thing to make a prediction, but to back it up with actual policy and investment like they are, it really underlines their belief in India's growth.
Right. It's one thing to predict India reaching that, that third spot in the global economy, but their actions really do underline their belief in this. So I'm curious, what factors do you think contribute to this from Australia's perspective?
Well, India's economic growth has been really impressive in recent years, right? But, it's more than just, looking at GDP figures. Australia seems to be recognizing India's potential, really, in a few key areas. Innovation is a big one, the rise of a substantial middle class. And, this is really crucial. India's increasingly important role in the Indo-Pacific region.
And all of those point towards a pretty powerful future, wouldn't you say? Oh. And this translates into some big moves on Australia's part. Their open support for India's permanent seat on the UN Security Council, that's a huge signal. It's almost like they're saying, we see you, India, as a major player on the world stage.
It's not just symbolic. You're right. It's a statement.
Yeah.
It demonstrates how that economic strength really does translate into global influence. And, for Australia, that's vital for their own strategic interests in the region.
Absolutely. And the article also highlights this idea of economic complementarities between our two nations. It's essentially saying that Australia has resources that India needs, and India has a market that Australia wants to tap into.
Exactly. It's a win-win, right?
Yeah, it's like two pieces of a puzzle fitting together. When I read that, I immediately thought of Australia's wealth of lithium and nickel, cobalt. These are all essential for India's push towards clean energy and electric vehicles, which, as we know, are hot-button issues globally right now.
Precisely. It's a natural synergy there, lots of potential. And this is really where the new roadmap for Australia's economic engagement with India comes into play.
Right, the roadmap.
It outlines a very concrete plan for deepening those economic ties.
So let's dive into this roadmap a little bit. What are some of the key points for India, especially for our UPSC aspirants listening in who need to be on top of these developments?
Well, the roadmap identifies 4 what they call superhighways of growth, and those are clean energy, education and skills, agribusiness, and tourism. And we can take clean energy as an example. We already discussed how Australia has those raw materials needed for India's green initiative. So this creates a lot of potential there for joint ventures, technology transfer, and ultimately a more sustainable future for both nations.
It's really a global issue, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Affecting everyone, and it goes beyond just those 4 areas, those 4 superhighways, right? There are also the 7, what the article calls major economic roads for cooperation. And these cover things like defense ties, which, given the current global tensions, are so crucial. And also space cooperation as India's space program continues to advance. I mean, these are all areas where UPSC questions could very easily pop up.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, this is all, very relevant for those exams.
And one of those superhighways, the one that I think deserves a closer look, especially for our aspiring civil servants listening in, is skill development. The article really highlights the massive scale of India's workforce training needs. And we're talking about, skilling 20 million people annually.
That's a huge number.
20 million. Wow. That really puts it into perspective. How does Australia fit into this equation? Because it seems like a pretty daunting task for any nation to tackle, frankly.
Well, Australian universities are really stepping up here. They're setting up campuses in India, offering high quality education, vocational training to try to meet those needs. And the article specifically mentions campuses in Gujarat International Finance Tech City, which is Gift City, as it's known. It's a special economic zone focused on finance and tech, and also in Noida, which is a major industrial hub near Delhi.
So they're directly investing in India's future workforce, and not just any workforce, but one that's equipped for those high-tech, high-skill jobs of the future. It seems like a pretty smart move on their part.
It is, and it's not just altruism. They're building those strong ties and investing in their own future workforce as well by strengthening ties with India through education. It's really a mutually beneficial situation, which, as we know, is key to any successful partnership.
Absolutely. And speaking of connections, we can't forget about the unique asset of the Indian diaspora in Australia.
Right.
We're talking over 1 million strong Indian Australians.
Yeah.
That's not just a community. That's a powerful human bridge between the two nations.
It is, and it goes beyond just the numbers. This diaspora fosters cultural understanding. They create business connections, and they even influence policy decisions in both countries.
And it's actively being nurtured, isn't it? There's the Matri Grants program, which is dedicated to strengthening those diaspora links, and we've got the Center for Australia-India Relations, which has received a significant amount of funding. Both of those are very concrete examples of how seriously both countries are taking this relationship.
For sure. It's laying the groundwork for agreements like the Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement, or CECA, as it's often called. It aims to build on the existing Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement, the ECTA. And you know what that means.
Fewer trade barriers, more opportunities for Indian businesses and professionals.
Exactly. It's all about taking that economic partnership to the next level.
It is. It is. And, we've covered a lot of ground already, and there's still so much more to unpack.
Oh, for sure. We've only just scratched the surface.
So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. And we're back. As we dig deeper into this Australia-India relationship, we got to think about the strategic side of things.
Yeah.
Especially in the context of, this kind of shifting global landscape we're seeing. Our UPSC aspirants, this is where it gets really interesting.
Oh, absolutely. We're witnessing a realignment of global powers in both Australia and India. They're navigating these changes in a way that really seems to align their interests, particularly when it comes to the Indo-Pacific region.
Right. The Indo-Pacific, it's becoming the epicenter of global activity, wouldn't you say, from trade and security to, strategic competition. Both countries clearly have a big stake in maintaining a free, open, and inclusive Indo-Pacific.
For sure. And that shared interest is, it's driving closer collaboration between them, especially in areas like defense and maritime security. We're seeing more joint naval exercises, intelligence sharing, and even, discussions about co-developing defense technologies.
So it's not just about, reacting to events as they happen. It's about being more proactive.
Right.
It's like they're working together to safeguard their interests in the region before things escalate.
Exactly, yeah. And it goes beyond just traditional security concerns. We're talking about cybersecurity, counterterrorism, even disaster relief. It's a multifaceted approach to really address, these diverse challenges that the Indo-Pacific faces.
And let's not forget that both nations are members of the Quad. That's the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, alongside the United States and Japan. For our UPSC folks out there, that adds a whole other layer of complexity to this relationship.
It does. The Quad is often seen as a counterbalance to China's growing assertiveness in the region. While it's not a formal military alliance, it provides a platform for these four democracies to really coordinate their strategies and actions in the Indo-Pacific.
And for India, the Quad it's a strategic masterstroke. It allows them to engage with these like-minded partners. It strengthens their security posture, and it projects their influence on the global stage. And it's really noteworthy that Australia has been a vocal supporter of India's inclusion in the Quad.
Yeah, they clearly see India as a key player in maintaining a stable and prosperous Indo-Pacific. Shifting gears a little bit, going back to the economic implications, particularly for Indian businesses and professionals, the roadmap really emphasizes creating a more favorable environment for trade and investment.
So we're talking about, reducing tariffs,
Yeah.
streamlining regulations, making it easier for people to move between the two countries, right?
Exactly. And that's really where the Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement, the CECA, comes into play. It aims to build on the existing ECTA and create a much more robust framework for economic engagement.
Yeah, I mean, the CCA has, the potential to significantly boost trade and investment. For Indian businesses, it could mean, easier access to the Australian market for their goods and services.
Yeah.
And for Indian professionals, it could open up opportunities to work and collaborate in Australia.
Right. And one area that's, particularly exciting is the technology sector. Both Australia and India have, these vibrant tech industries with lots of room for collaboration, in artificial intelligence, fintech, cybersecurity. These are fields that are constantly evolving, and partnerships like this, they can lead to some really groundbreaking innovations.
Yeah, we're already seeing partnerships between Australian and Indian tech companies.
Yeah.
And this trend is likely to accelerate in the coming years, right?
Oh, for sure.
I mean, this exchange of knowledge, expertise, and talent, I mean, it could lead to some pretty significant growth for both nations. And for our UPSC aspirants out there, this is another crucial area to pay attention to. Questions related to India's technological advancements, its role in the global tech landscape, and its partnerships with countries like Australia. I mean, they're highly likely to appear on the exam.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is essential information.
And, it's not just for the exam, it's for anyone who's interested in shaping India's future.
Right. It's about understanding those global trends. Now, beyond the economic and strategic aspects, there's also the potential for cultural exchange as well. This partnership, it goes beyond just transactions. It's about fostering understanding and appreciation between two diverse and vibrant cultures.
And the roadmap acknowledges this cultural dimension. It includes promoting tourism, educational exchanges and collaborations in the arts and sports.
Yeah. Right. And these initiatives can really help build those people-to-people connections and strengthen the overall relationship.
Yeah, I mean, for India, this cultural exchange can be incredibly enriching. It exposes Indians to new ideas, perspectives, and ways of life. It fosters a more cosmopolitan and outward-looking society, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. And it also allows India to showcase its own rich cultural heritage to the world, promoting understanding and appreciation of India's traditions, arts, and values.
It's a two-way street.
Right, exactly.
We've covered a lot of ground here, from the strategic implications of the partnership in the Indo-Pacific to the potential for economic and cultural exchange.
We have, but while the Australia-India relationship is clearly on an upward trajectory, I think we need to address the challenges as well. The potential roadblocks. No partnership is without its complexities, right?
Right. You got to be realistic here.
Yeah.
So what are some of these potential challenges? We'll explore those in our next segment, so stay tuned. All right, welcome back, everyone. So as we wrap up our deep dive into this Australia-India partnership, we've talked about the economics, we've talked about the strategy, but it's time to address the elephant in the room. Every relationship has its complexities, and this one is no different.
Exactly. While both countries are, clearly enthusiastic about this partnership, we need to consider some things. There's some historical baggage there. There are geopolitical realities and even domestic political pressures that could create some obstacles along the way.
Right. Right. And then, for our UPSC aspirants listening in, this is where the real analysis comes in. It's not just about understanding the good stuff, but also those potential challenges. So let's start with that that historical baggage. Australia and India haven't always been on the same page. There were periods of tension, especially regarding nuclear nonproliferation and some trade disputes.
Right. Yeah. The legacy of the Cold War and India's non-aligned stance, it created some friction for sure. However, both countries have really worked to overcome those differences, and I think it's reflected in the current level of engagement we're seeing. They've managed to find common ground on a whole range of issues.
So the past hasn't completely disappeared, but they're not letting it define the future of the relationship, which is a good sign. But what about the geopolitical realities? I mean, the elephant in the room here is China, right? Both Australia and India have complex relationships with China that inevitably impacts their partnership.
Absolutely. That's where things get a little bit delicate. While both countries are, they're wary of China's growing assertiveness in the Indo-Pacific, they also have significant economic ties with China. So balancing those competing interests, it can be tricky.
And it seems like there might be some differences in their approaches as well. Australia has been more vocal in its criticism of China, while India has been more nuanced in its approach.
Yeah, India's approach is definitely shaped by its history with China, its proximity, and its economic dependence. Australia, being geographically further away, has been more assertive in pushing back against Chinese influence, particularly in the security domain.
So how do they navigate these differences within the framework of their partnership? Because it seems like it could create some tension if not handled carefully.
It requires, a lot of open communication, understanding of each other's constraints, and a willingness to really find that common ground. The Quad provides a platform for that dialogue and coordination, but it's not a complete solution by any means.
And then there are domestic political considerations as well, public opinion, political pressures, even changes in government. Those can influence foreign policy decisions.
Absolutely. Each country has its own internal dynamics that could affect the partnership.
Yeah.
Economic downturns, concerns about foreign influence, even upcoming elections. All of these can play a role.
So it's a constantly evolving landscape,
Yeah.
with both opportunities and challenges. So as we wrap up this episode, what are some key takeaways for our UPSC aspirants, who are trying to analyze this complex relationship?
Well, I think it's crucial to look beyond just the headlines, right? To really understand that historical context, the geopolitical realities, and the domestic political factors that are shaping this partnership. Don't just focus on the positive aspects. It's important to recognize those potential challenges and the divergences in approach as well.
Yeah, let's not forget about those external factors too, right? I mean,
Mhm.
things like, China's actions in the region or global economic trends. Those can have a pretty significant impact on the trajectory of this relationship. It's a dynamic situation. It requires a nuanced understanding.
Absolutely. And as a final thought for our listeners, if Australia is betting big on India's future, what does that tell us about India's, growing global influence and its potential to really reshape the world stage?
That's a great question to consider. I mean, Australia's proactive engagement with India, it really suggests that India is becoming a global force to be reckoned with, and as India continues to rise, we can expect more countries to seek these kinds of strategic partnerships and economic opportunities with India.
For sure. And for our UPSC aspirants out there, understanding India's role in this emerging world order, its strategic partnerships, and its approach to these geopolitical challenges, I mean, that's going to be crucial for success in those exams and frankly, in shaping India's future.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. And if you found this deep dive helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below of any further questions. And for a more in-depth look, you can always check out the original article, Australia, India, New Roadmap for Economic and Strategic Cooperation in the Hindu. Until next time, keep those brains buzzing and happy studying, everyone.